Hey, it's Mike. Thanks for tuning back in. It's Friday, Attic Find Friday. I'm very excited about this one and also nervous about it, which I'll get into in a little bit. But first, my wife brought me this. This comes from longtime subscriber Joe Kaiser, who mailed this to me a long time ago. Joe, thank you very much. Don Robinson autograph. He saw it on eBay and wanted to get it to me. My wife pulled it out of the mailbox a long time ago, put it down in the car seat, in the seat next to her in the car, and it must have fallen down in the gap, and she forgot about it and just found it today. So Joe, thank you. Don Robinson had a pretty decent career. He had 17 WAR. He finished 8th in the Cy Young one year. He gave up Mike Schmidt's 500th career home run, which doesn't mean he was good, but he had a pretty decent career. Joe, thank you. Mr. Mint, the Al Rosen, or the Rosen Find of 1952 Topps, is maybe the most legendary, the most unbelievable find of sports cards ever. It's intimidating to do this video. I've thought about it. I've had some articles open for weeks and weeks, and every week I think, this isn't the week. This is the week. It's a big one. There's a lot of background here. There's a lot of information. It's a tough one to do, and I know I'm going to get some stuff wrong. I'm going to leave stuff out. I couldn't get everything in there, but let me know in the comments what did I miss that you feel is important. What are some other neat things about it? What is your favorite thing that came out of this find? So first of all, let's talk about Mr. Mint. A lot of these notes that I have here, and I have a lot. This is the most notes I've ever had for one of these videos, 2 full pages. A lot of the notes on the Mr. Mint's background come to us from Sports Collectors Digest, an article by John Newman, who does a great job with this stuff, has a ton of knowledge. I really recommend you go read that. As I try to remember, I'll put links to the articles I used for the most part in the video description. Also, the background of the actual find comes to us from psacard.com. They have a great article written about this. So Mr. Mint, Al Rosen, was a serial entrepreneur. Before he got into baseball cards, he sold jewelry, and he sold insurance, and he sold clothing and antiques. And at the time he started as a dealer, he was actually selling photocopiers. And he went to a card show and decided at this card show he had to give up his business of a copy machine business and go full-time into cards. And back at that time, early 80s, I guess, there weren't very many full-time card dealers out there. There were a small number of card shops. Most dealers had day jobs, and then they would sell cards at night or in the weekends. Mr. Mint, as you probably know, is a very outgoing, boisterous, kind of braggadocio kind of guy. And he made himself famous. He was a loud, brash guy who made himself famous and very wealthy because of who he was. The outgoing nature of his personality. He wouldn't take no. He wanted money. He would take out full-page ads with pictures of him just holding wads of cash, advertising that he was buying cards and a lot of cards. And then he would set up at card shows, and he would put a display case with hundreds of $100 bills filling the display case so people would know this is where the money is, and this is who's going to buy collections and cards and stuff like that. He had money. He was able to travel to buy cards and collections where most dealers were not able to at that time. He said that he purchased 9 T206 Honus Wagners back in the day. Only 50 of them exist. So the fact that he purchased 9, and of course maybe some of them he purchased more than once, but he purchased and sold 9 of them, and he said that he never held a single one for more than half of a day. He knew the industry, he knew the buyers, and he knew how to get to them. Pretty impressive, if all true, of course. And it's pretty believable based on what we know about Mr. Mint. He was featured on Good Morning America, the first person ever featured on Good Morning America or any show like that, talking about selling or buying sports cards. He was also featured in a full-length article on Sports Illustrated, Sport Magazine. So he was big-time famous back then. He even had a Beanie Baby model after him. that was supposed to be modeled after him. Pretty cool stuff. Mr. Mint made $200 million in the hobby over 25 years. His biggest year was around $8 or $9 million. Pretty good. He wrote 2 books about the hobby. He was a relentless promoter. He always said, don't get attached to the cards. And that was his motto was, you buy these cards no matter how much you love them, don't get attached to them. Turn them around, make some money off of them. And that was his goal. He just wanted to make money. He was unapologetic about wanting to just make money. So the find in the spring of 1986, and there's competing dates here. I heard 85, I heard 86. PSA card says 1986. I'm going to go with that. He was sitting at home watching TV. It was a weekend day, and somebody called him up, a man named David Espinola, a Boston Lumber Company forklift driver, called him up and said that he had talked with a truck driver who said that he had a few 1952 Topps cards for sale. Several 1952 Topps cards for sale. Would Mr. Mint be interested? And Rosen was skeptical, but he talked to him a little bit about it, took the info of the truck driver, and he called the truck driver named Ted Lodge, and Lodge said that he had several of each high-numbered cards. And so Rosen's interested, but very skeptical. Where did this guy get several high number cards of each of the high numbers? Now, if you're not familiar with the story of the high numbers, 1952 Topps cards were not popular. They just didn't sell. And by the time the high numbers came around, it was late in the season or at the end, after the season ended, the baseball season, and they just couldn't sell those at all. Cy Berger executive at Topps, ended up taking the remaining cases and dumping them into the water in New York. Gone forever. So the high number cards are very, very rare, and in good condition, far rarer. So as Rosen was speaking with Ted Lodge over the next few days, every time he would call him, Lodge would tell him the number was increasing. The number of high number cards was increasing as he dug through. So Rosen says to him, how many mantles do you have? And Lodge says, about 30. And so Rosen is very skeptical here. 30 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle cards. Didn't believe it, but how do you ignore that? So Rosen ended up borrowing thousands of dollars from a dealer friend of his, and he and that dealer and a armed policeman as guard drive up to Quincy, Massachusetts to visit this guy who was in a house that he had inherited from his father. Almost no furniture in this house. There was a china cabinet, and in the china cabinet, the man pulled out a silver tray with cards face down, 1952 Topps cards face down. Number 302 was visible, and so he just went straight to 311, which was the mantle. Rosen did. Picked up a stack of 30 cards. All of them were mantle, and there were still more there face down. After looking through the stacks, Rosen's hands are shaking. He's baffled, he's interested, he's confused, he's still skeptical. And then Lodge asks him, would you like to see the rest? And Rosen says, the rest? There's more? So they went into the kitchen, and the Topps case, a Topps case, is sitting there. This Topps case had been sitting in this father's attic for 34 years. So 1952 to 1986. And when Lodge inherited the house, he found the case in the attic, knew what he had, which is why he called Rosen smartly. Rosen needs some air. He goes outside, he brings a handful of cards with him, just gets some fresh air, and he's inspecting the cards. He smelled them, looked them over, they felt real, they smelled real, but he's still convinced that they're fake. So he goes back inside, and he looks at the 1952 Topps box. The address label was 2 Globe Sporting Goods Manufacturing, Boston. It was from the toys division of Grattan and Knight in Worcester, Mass. I'm going to get eaten alive by Boston people for almost pronouncing Worcester wrong. And the father was believed to have worked at one of those 2 places back in the 1950s. So this is what convinced him. This is what convinced Rosen. There was marketing materials with the case. One of them said, Hey kids, with every new Graco product, get 3 new shiny Topps baseball cards. These cards were throwaways. They were throw-ins or giveaways that were given to kids to help sell sporting goods like gloves and bats and things like that. And that was another thing that helped convince Rosen, because he knew that they had a really hard time selling and getting rid of 1952 Topps cards. Rosen stuck his hand in the case. He pulled out a handful of off-condition cards, including some more Mantles. And the lodge said to him, for those in the case there, $10,000 are yours. They're yours. The cards were color-rich. They had sharp corners. Rosen was still having a hard time with it, but he started becoming a believer thanks to that case and the feel and the smell of them. So that day, Mr. Mint bought 5,500 cards, 75% of which were high number cards. He paid, all told, $125,000. That included the finder's fee to the other person that told him about it, and his police escort, of course, he had to pay. But driving home, he had regrets. He had fears. Did he bite off more than he could chew? Was it too much? Were they fake? Was this going to ruin him? Totally understandable. But that night and the next day, he started sorting through them. He had 18 runs of cards between numbers 251 to number 407, which included Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle, Jackie Robinson. 18 runs of them. Every single card. So the next day, he started selling them. One run, $12,000. He sold 9 of those in the first day. So he knew it's too little. $12,000 is too little. The next day, he increased it to $18,000 for a run, sold 3 more. Day 3, he increased it to $20,000 per run. He sold 2 more. So in 3 days, he made $202,000 just selling 14 runs of cards. He was asking $3,500 for sharp Mantles, but he wasn't really selling them at first until word started getting around about the find. It became kind of famous in the community. And he sold 4 pretty quickly after that, totaling $14,000, each at $3,500. He sold 10 off-center Mantles in a lot for $10,000, $1,000 each. He saved the best Mantle for himself for a year before selling it. Total gross in just a couple of months was almost $500,000, $475,000. Marshall Fogel, who I'll do a video on him at some point too, owned 2 PSA 9 Mantles from this find, and he used those to help buy the PSA 10 Mantle that he has now. Fogel also owns 50 from the find, including a Jackie Robinson PSA 9. He says that he paid between $400 and $2,000 for each card that he bought. It's believed that 2 of the 3 PSA 10 Mantles came from the Rosen find. There were 73 to 75 of the first 3 high numbers, Mantle, Jackie Robinson, Bobby Thompson, 73 to 75 each of them. 42 of the Mantles were beautiful. One of those, of course, was the SGC 9.5 that sold for $12.6 million in 2022. The PSA 10, or neither of the PSA 10s have sold at any point recently, so it's impossible to tell what those values might be, but most estimates have them at many tens of millions of dollars. Somebody estimated $100 million. It's impossible to know at this point. There were also 13 Eddie Matthews rookies. As for the case that was on the table there in that guy's kitchen, Rosen kept it for a few years and then he sold it to a collector, and then DA Card World ended up buying it from that collector just a few years ago. So pretty cool. Rosen unfortunately passed away about 6 years ago now, but he left an outsized legacy in the industry. I still get comments on a lot of these attic finds. When are you going to do the Rosen Attic Find? When are you going to do the Rosen Attic Find? I do weekly Attic Find Friday videos, mostly sports cards, mostly baseball cards. I do daily, almost, sports card content. Click that subscribe button if you're new here. I was going to go to Diamond King Sports Cards in New Hampshire tomorrow. I'm not going to make it. I am going to hopefully go to Don's Sports Card Center in Portland. Tomorrow I'll get a video out, and then I'll do another video on Sunday. Tonight, by the way, Friday night, I'm doing a live stream on Sammy Thunder's channel doing baseball card trivia. It's at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. It's going to be so much fun. So come on over, watch, throw some comments in. It'll be fun. And then next week I'm on Hobby Think Tank on Bench Clear Media. So I'm busy, and I love it. Let me know what you think about this stuff. I appreciate it. Hope you have a great weekend.